Hello, my name is Nikki Samanchik, and I am an attorney in San Diego, California. My firm is Samanchik Law Group, and one of our primary practice areas is nonprofit law. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how to represent nonprofits, volunteer as a board member, or start your own nonprofit. So before I get started with today's topic, I kind of wanted to introduce you to the idea of nonprofit law as a practice area. So for many business attorneys, nonprofit formations probably come up quite a bit. You probably have clients asking about them. Or if you're in the estate planning arena, that's also a common thing that might come up with private foundations. And then as an attorney, I'm sure that you get asked to sit on a lot of boards, or possibly you've thought about adding that to something that you'd like to do with your volunteer time. And so, the idea of how a nonprofit runs and kind of some of the legal aspects of a nonprofit are something that I think a lot of attorneys come across in their practice in one way or another. So as a nonprofit attorney specifically, my job really involves like a variety of things. So part of it is the formation of nonprofits. And what that means is that someone will come to me with the idea to form a nonprofit, and I will take them through that formation process and form their nonprofit for them so that they have a distinct legal entity that is 501c3 tax exempt. So we'll talk a little bit today about what that looks like to form a nonprofit and how that process works. But that's a big part of my job. And so that's kind of, a task that is pretty streamlined and is really not dissimilar to forming any other type of business entity, just a lot more steps and compliance involved. And so that's one aspect. And when somebody comes to me and they say, that they want to form a nonprofit, they often say that they've had this idea for years, they've been sitting on it, and they just want to help someone. And so part of my job in forming the nonprofit really is to have a very candid discussion with them about what it means to have a nonprofit, because there are a lot of misconceptions, which we'll kind of go through a little bit more today. But some of the misconceptions involve the idea that nobody owns a nonprofit. And so before we get through that formation process, I just like my clients to understand that they're going to be creating an entity that they actually don't have ownership in. And that means they won't be able to profit off the entity or share, in any proceeds. You can't sell a nonprofit. And so I really like them to have that understanding in advance. So that is one big part of the job, is forming the nonprofit. And again, we'll go through those steps. Another big job as a nonprofit attorney is what I call outside general counsel work. And so this is the type of work that any, inside general counsel would be doing for a nonprofit if the nonprofit had the budget to have a general counsel, which most of them don't. And so this is just really anything that might come up for the nonprofit. So a lot of the times it might be reviewing bylaws. And this is tricky for nonprofits because nonprofits often have the idea that they should do everything on their own on a shoestring budget. And so once they actually do start bringing in revenue through donations or services, and they have money to hire an attorney, they often have bylaws that they possibly pulled offline or the board kind of compiled on their own. And so typically a bylaw review, the bylaws are in pretty rough shape and they often are not in compliance with the law. And bylaws are a lot more, I would say, important with a nonprofit, which we'll talk about just because the governance aspects of nonprofits are just so essential. Another thing that I'll do as outside general counsel is I'll deal with board disputes. So you may think this doesn't happen often with nonprofits unless you happen to be on a PTA and you kind of see how those work. But they often do have board disputes. It's a power struggle, or it's maybe a dispute among just board members or among the membership in the board. Oftentimes I will come in to educate the board on their fiduciary duties, to educate them on what the rights of the members are, and to kind of just navigate that dispute with them and make sure that everyone is really protected, with the real idea being that my job always is to represent the nonprofit and not any individual board member.